You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and White House correspondent. Not at the White House, not today. Nope. Just got back from vacation. I ain't there. I'm right here in Los Angeles with you in afternoon drive time. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Follow me on all the socials at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. Last but not least, subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast powered by KBLA Talk 1580, the only Black-owned and operated talk station west of the Mississippi. Now, listen, y'all, there's a lot that is happening in this country and around the world. I'm sure you saw the news about Trump striking Venezuela over the weekend. This is going to be your one-stop shop, because when we come forward, I'm going to have an expert panel of folks, experts in international affairs, to really help us break this thing down. And point out what we may want to pay attention to, what we should be paying attention to as the story continues to develop. And so hold tight, because we got you covered on all things related to Venezuela. For all the Richard Smallwood fans out there, and I count myself as one of them, Afro News announcing that Saturday, January 24th, 2026 at 12 noon, the First Baptist Church of Glenarden International will be hosting the celebration of life in honor of the legendary maestro Richard Smallwood. And so if you're interested in paying your respects, I'm sure you can go to the First Baptist Church of Glenarden International's website to get all of the details related to the funeral services, the celebration of life for Richard Smallwood. Now, it's time for your National News Roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, if you're on your GLP-1 journey and you're sick of the shot, well, you've got options now. The Washington Post is reporting that Novo Nordisk has launched the first GLP-1 weight loss pill today, with a pledge that manufacturing investments will enable the drug maker to avoid the type of shortages that plagued the rollout of the injectable version. The company said that doctors can now prescribe the new oral version of Wegovy, and patients can pick it up at more than 70,000 pharmacies and via mail order services throughout the country. The starting dose of the once daily pill cost $150 a month for patients without insurance coverage, while the largest dose, on which patients lose the most weight, will be available by the end of the week. That's how quick. By the end of the week, for $300 a month. For those with employers' insurance, the company says it will cost as little as $25 a month. Look, I think this is one of the biggest breakthroughs of our time. Period. I mean, I was blown away at the mRNA technology that was used to develop the COVID vaccine. And, that technology is being used to develop vaccines for certain cancers, for HIV. I think that's a miracle unto itself. But the new lease on life that these GLP-1s are affording people is nothing to snuff at. And so if you're interested, talk to your doctor, and you may want to get the pill version if you're a little squeamish about the injectable version. Moving along, back to our major story for today. It's what's happening in Venezuela. And I think it's really important that we connect the dots. The LA Times reporting on the ties between California and Venezuela. And they go back more than a century with Chevron. That's right. Chevron, the oil giant that was founded right here in California, where I'm at today, and until recently headquartered right here in California. Guess what? They're the only foreign petroleum company still operating in Venezuela, and it's the largest foreign investor. Also, President Trump, you should know he has vowed to restore Venezuela's economy with oil profits generated by U.S. companies. It is also worth noting that other major oil companies, including ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil, they pulled out of Venezuela in 2007 when then President Hugo Chavez, he required them to surrender majority ownership of their operation to the country's state-controlled oil company. But Chevron remained. Some people say Chevron played the long game. That's what industry analysts are saying. That they played the long game, hoping to someday resume reaping big profits from the investments that the company started making there almost a century ago. And so, as I teach my students, and as some of the best in the business know very well, follow the money. Follow the money. I think what has taken place this past weekend is above the pale. It's above the pale. And I don't think we want to live in a world when a sitting president can decide to level an attack against a foreign nation, to extract that nation's president, and to take over running that country. Isn't that why we've been spending all this money supporting our ally Ukraine against Russian aggression? Isn't this the thing that presidents, both Democrat and Republican, have urged China not to do as it relates to Taiwan? And so why is it that all of a sudden it's okay for this American president to take control of Venezuela? Follow the money. We're going to do that more when we come forward with our guest this hour, Bishop Joseph Tolton. He joins us along with Desiree Cormier Smith. Together, they are the dynamic international affairs duo that we need to make this make sense. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and it's always a great pleasure to welcome Bishop Joseph W. Tolton. He is the founder of Interconnected Justice. He is also a former senior advisor for religious affairs at the U.S. State Department. We're also joined with another State Department alum, Desiree Cormier Smith. She's co-president of the Alliance for Diplomacy and Justice. She's also a former special representative for race and justice at the U.S. State Department. Oh my gosh, it feels like it was eons ago that even a role like that could exist. Happy New Year and welcome to A More Perfect Union.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for being here. I specifically wanted to ring in the new year with a conversation between the two of you, our international affairs experts, to help us make it make sense. There's a lot of hot takes circulating these internet streets on what took place this weekend in Venezuela. Call me crazy, but I think part of the power that we have as a nation is not just the strength of our military, it's not just the strength of our economy, but it's the power of our example. And one of the things that worries me the most is that we have unleashed sort of next level instability in the world. I don't think we want to live in a world where an American president can decide to launch a military intervention, an occupation of a foreign nation and to seize control of their resources, to seize control of their government. I don't think we want to live in a world where an American president does that, because then how do we then turn to the Chinese and say, oh, by the way, don't do that to Taiwan? How do we go to Russia and say, don't do that to Ukraine? Right? And how do we go to any, leader in any part of the world and say, that's not the way that civilized nations operate. And so, Bishop Tolton talked to us, about the far-reaching consequences of this military action. I've been urging our leaders, learners, and listeners to follow the money. Beyond the money that people believe there is to be made, there are some consequences that may outweigh certainly any short-term financial benefit. No?
Absolutely. And it's wonderful to be with you. And of course, to be with my friend Desiree. It's so good to see you again today. This is absolutely frightening and chilling what the United States is doing, and seemingly so with a bit of impunity. One of the things that I think I want to kind of speak to, that I think hopefully brings it home for us as African Americans, is this march that the president is on, and the domino effect, where he's already called out Colombia, which has a huge African population, Afro-Colombian population. He's called out Mexico and even Greenland. But one of the places that he hasn't identified that I'm deeply concerned about is that this is also going to be a march to Port-au-Prince. This is going to be a march to Haiti. Haiti has always been a place that has been seen as a permanent problem and a laboratory for foreign control and extraction. And given the current instability that there is in Haiti, if you compare Haiti's current situation to the checklist that was given as to why there was a rationale for what we did in Venezuela, Haiti ticks off every box. And one of the things that we don't talk enough about is the fact that Haiti, literally, in terms of where it sits, in terms of its geography, it's on the same corridor as Venezuela. And it's been believed for years that there is tremendous oil deposits off the coast of Haiti that have gone undiscovered. You can be sure that Trump has this in mind. Haiti is also known for having all sorts of minerals like gold and copper and bauxite and marble and limestone. And these are underexplored and largely untapped. I am extremely worried and concerned about the fact that we are about to roll the hemisphere. And I think that Haiti is going to ultimately become a gem for this administration because of all the reasons that I've just listed. So this is dangerous for the global world order. This is dangerous for people of African descent. This is dangerous for our hemisphere. And it's destabilizing, I think, for Americans at large who are going through their own affordability crisis and can't even understand what the logic or rationale is, or even connect the dots. This is appalling, and it's dangerous, and the kind of just naked imperialism here is truly something that has got to be reined in by several PowerPoints, not just the Congress, but the people now have got to rise up.
Desiree, one of the things that we heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio say over the weekend, particularly as he was making his tour on various Sunday shows, is basically, the Western Hemisphere, this is our neighborhood, and we can do what we want in our neighborhood as long as we're advancing our national security interests, as long as we are acting in a law enforcement posture. We can do what we want in this hemisphere. What do you make of that argument? It sounds like a schoolyard taunt to me, but I will allow you, or one of our resident American diplomats, to dispute that.
Yeah, it's definitely schoolyard taunt, bully, but it's also, like Bishop Tolton said, it's imperialistic, right? But they weren't hiding these intentions. It was right there in the national security strategy that they released a few months ago. And I know there's so much going on, and this administration is throwing so many awful things at us all at once. It's hard to catch it all, right? But I did put myself through reading the national security strategy, and it was awful. But in the section on the Western Hemisphere, they lay it out right there. They say we're basically adding to the Monroe Doctrine that says we are within our rights to kind of police this neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. And so if something happens that we don't like that's deemed a quote unquote threat to our interests, we have the right to intervene. This is how they justify this. It's incredibly dangerous, as Bishop Tolton said. It shows a complete disregard for international law, for the United Nations Charter that talks about the need to respect every country's sovereignty and their territorial integrity. But it's also a violation of domestic law, right? We have to remember the Constitution gives Congress alone the right to declare war on a foreign country. And despite what Rubio says, despite what anyone else from this administration says, this was a military operation. That is war. That is an act of war. They try and spin it as a law enforcement operation. It was a military operation. We went into another country with the U.S. military in the dark of the night, invaded that country, bombed that country, extracted, essentially kidnapped the head of state and his wife, and brought them back to the United States. And one thing I want to mention that I have been really disturbed to see has been completely ignored is the human toll of this operation. People were killed. Innocent people were killed. Innocent Venezuelans were killed. People's homes were destroyed by the bombs that the U.S. military dropped, bombs paid for by U.S. taxpayers, right? People's entire lives have been destroyed, and there's not going to be any accountability for that. There's no justice for that. So this, by all means, was just wrong, and it just shows the complete disregard that this administration has, not only for international law, but for our own domestic law and our own Constitution. It's incredibly dangerous.
Speaking of the hypocrisy that we're seeing coming out of this administration, there are a number of folks, Bishop, that are talking about the doublespeak coming out of this administration, how right-wing authoritarians are okay, but left-wing dictators are not. We know that President Trump referred to Maduro as a dictator not once, not twice, but 4 times during his news conference on Saturday. He called him an outlaw dictator, an illegitimate dictator, a now deposed dictator, and a dictator and terrorist. But the reality is there are lots of dictators and authoritarians and strongmen in the rest of the world, many of whom Trump has praised in recent years, whether we're talking about Hungary's Viktor Orban, or we're talking about Argentina's leader, or the Saudi royal prince, Kim Jong-il. I could go on and on and on. Talk to us about the doublespeak and the hypocrisy and how this fundamentally makes America less safe.
When George Santos was, when his sentence was commuted, Trump had the gall to say, well, perhaps what he did wasn't so good, but at least he was a Republican. I mean, I lift up that domestic example because clearly his personal ideology is that if you are towing the ideological line that comports itself with right-leaning policies and politics and perspectives, whatever you do will be sanctified. And on many levels, he's very interested, I believe, in building up kind of mini Trumps around the world that will do his bidding. That's the relationship that we've built with Qatar. That's the relationship that we're building with Rwanda. We are all clear about the fact that it was Kagame who has M23 in the eastern horn of the Congo that is causing all sorts of havoc and creating all sorts of opportunities for misguided mineral extraction. In the Washington Accord, the deal that cemented what we assumed to be a peace deal between Rwanda and Congo, the narrative that Rwanda has spun is the narrative that the U.S. has sanctioned and put an exclamation point behind. So this bravado, this kind of tough man posturing that is completely connected with a total adherence to a particular right-wing ideology is one that Trump is obviously advancing. to the point that he's actually encouraging other minions around the world to actually replicate his behavior, as long as they toe the line as it relates to connecting their misguided adventures to American profitability, which is certainly the case between Trump and Rwanda and what's happening in the eastern part of the Congo as one clear example.
When we come forward, I want to talk about the real test of politics, which is what comes next. Mm-hmm. And the president's response thus far has not been very convincing in terms of, the communicating any sort of plan that the administration has for what comes next. When we come forward, I want to do some scenario planning with our international affairs experts to prepare ourselves for what could come next. And the role of the international community, if any, as we really find ourselves in uncharted waters. Make no mistake about it. The sitting American president, Donald Trump, has not just put Venezuela on notice, he seized control of Venezuela. And he says the United States, his administration, is running Venezuela right now as we speak. He has put countries like Colombia and Cuba on notice. And as we've heard from Bishop Tolton, that the folks in Haiti are maybe wringing their hands right now, wondering what comes next. More when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and she is Desiree Cormier Smith, the co-president of the Alliance for Diplomacy and Justice. And he is Bishop Joseph W. Tolton. He's the founder of Interconnected Justice. And, we're here just walking through some of the major takeaways, high-level takeaways from the invasion of Venezuela, the control that the American government, that the American president says he has of Venezuela right now. At the top of the hour, we were reminding you all to follow the money. And speaking of the money, it's worth noting that NBC News reporting that oil prices swing after the U.S. captures Venezuela's president, Maduro. It's worth noting that shares of Chevron, the only U.S. energy firm that's currently authorized to operate in Venezuela, they soared as much as 10% in pre-market trading. ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips shares also rose about 4%. Oil refiners Valero and Phillips 66 rose about 7%. And shares of energy company suppliers like Halliburton also posted gains between 7 and 9%. And so, one of the things that I'm going to be paying attention to in the coming days and weeks is how many members of Congress bought up a lot of these stocks right before this military action by this president. Follow the money. All these folks are saying, well, the president didn't come to Congress to ask us for authorization. Did you know? Let's check your stocks. But, again, here to help us make sense out of this, and more importantly, what comes next, what we should expect, particularly when it comes to the international community. We know that the UN secretary earlier today, the UN Secretary General expressed that he was deeply concerned about the violations of international law. What can and should international bodies like the UN do in the days after this violation of international law? Desiree?
Yeah, I mean, they held an emergency session today. Colombia called for it, and China and Russia backed them up. And I'm glad that they did that. And I think, generally speaking, all of the statements, condemned the actions, the United States actions. I'm sure there were a few exceptions, as we can expect. But I think it's important to note that the UN is limited in what it can actually do. Let's be honest. It doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. And it's important to note that the United States is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So that means it has veto power. We've seen the United States wield this veto power, I would say inappropriately, and I would say in contradiction of the values of the United Nations, and particularly when it comes to human rights. We saw that, unfortunately, several times under the Biden administration when it came to Gaza. Right, whenever we saw a UN Security Council resolution come up, the United States would wield its veto power. So I, unfortunately, expect the same, more of the same, with any future Security Council resolutions on Venezuela to be vetoed by the United States. However, there can be things happening in the General Assembly where every country gets a vote and every country has equal power. I expect that to also happen, especially if the United States vetoes anything in the Security Council. But I also think it's important to note, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think the Biden administration, even though I served in the Biden administration, there's some blame to go to the Biden administration too, because it's unconditional support for Israel really undermined the international rules-based order. And I think it laid the groundwork not only for the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, but for things like this to happen, right? Because even though we're one of the creators of this system, we contributed to the undermining of it by making a whole carve out and saying there can be exceptions when we don't like it. And so I think it's important to note that there has been an erosion of the international rules-based order under Democratic and Republican administrations. There's plenty of blame to go around.
Speaking of this erosion of international norms, international order, I was aghast when I saw this headline earlier today from Politico saying that NATO is done. NATO is done if Trump invades Greenland. That's what the Danish prime minister is warning. They're saying explicitly, if the U.S. president, Donald Trump, if he invades Greenland, which he's been flirting with doing, it will spell the end of NATO. Trump, just last week, he ratcheted up threats to take over the self-ruling Danish territory in the Arctic, saying that it should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. That's what the Danish prime minister says. And they said that they want to make it clear that if the U.S. chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that's been established since the end of the Second World War. Bishop Tolton, what do you make of this?
This is what manifest destiny would empower one to do. When you are powered and driven by the ideals and the energy of dominion, and that dominion is justified both in your theology and in your political ideology, this is what this produces. This is absolutely beyond breathtaking that we're actually having this conversation because Trump understands that this is absolutely both an existential and imminent threat to the very existence of NATO. But he's yet rolling the dice, at least rhetorically here, because I think that he absolutely has real strategic intentions. And I don't think that those intentions can be harnessed at this point by reason. And it just might be that the Greenland situation is the one that goes off the rails to the degree that there then is some kind of a real check where the Europeans are going to have to stand up and they're going to have to push back.
I mean, have you ever seen anything like this coming out of an international body? I mean, the fact that NATO, has always been able to rely on the United States to support its allies. And this is the first time in my lifetime and in your lifetime and the lifetimes of many of our leaders, learners, and listeners that we've ever heard, a NATO ally, talk about aggression from the United States and how much of an existential threat that represents to NATO.
Yeah, I mean, the Danish Prime Minister's statement is not outlandish. It's fact, right? How can NATO exist if an alliance member invades another alliance member? Right? That's what this is, and I think they are right to be taking Donald Trump seriously, and trying to encourage the rest of the European Union and NATO members to begin to take him seriously. Um, I think the fact that he actually did what he did in Venezuela, and we have yet to see Congress check him, is really scary because it will embolden him to do it in other places. He has already mused about doing that on Air Force One to reporters. He's not trying to hide it, right? He mentioned it. I mean, Bishop Tolton said it earlier. He called out by name Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, Greenland. All of these places should be taking him seriously. This man is emboldened, and we have a Congress that is, on one party is issuing strongly worded statements, and the party of the president is praising him as some kind of decisive hero. It's incredibly dangerous and mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah. In our remaining minutes, I want to ask you, Bishop, about the not guilty plea today from Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. He pled not guilty. He told the judge, quote, "I'm a decent man." He and his wife were seized by U.S. forces early on January 3rd during the attack on Venezuela. And Maduro and his wife are charged in a U.S. narcotics trafficking conspiracy. Where's this thing going to go? You have Maduro saying, I am the president of Venezuela. Meanwhile, Venezuela has just sworn in an acting president. And meanwhile, you have international observers and leaders of international bodies like the UN, saying that what's happened here flies in the face of international law. Where do we go from here, and what should we prepare for as this telenovela of sorts is just getting started?
One of the most remarkable things about the situation that we find ourselves in is that the United States Supreme Court has declared that Trump's actions are covered by this idea of immunity. And the fact that we're going to arrest the sitting head of another nation, drag him to trial in under the banner of our national system, and actually try him when the Supreme Court has said that our own president's actions are covered by immunity, is just absolutely, completely, and totally scrambled. I do wonder if this will make its way to the Supreme Court and that they will dismiss this case because of the rationale that, or the implicit rationale that I've just suggested. What's most unfortunate is that Maduro is all of the things that are being stated. Yes, he's a criminal. Yes, he tanked the economy in Venezuela. Yes, certainly we know that he's deeply connected to the narcotics industry. But the method whereby which he needs to be dealt with has to be in the context of a multilateral body, be that the Organization of American States, be that the United Nations itself, or another body. That's the appropriate way to deal with this, in a way where America's power and interest is somewhat diffused, and where there are other actors and players involved who are able to create a much more a clear sense of objectivity to this global crisis. This is just really. It's just remarkable. I can't even believe the words that are coming out of my mouth in response to what you're saying, because this is just so completely and totally indescribable, and the precedent that it's setting is so incredibly dangerous. And to see Lindsey Graham, one of the most kind of studied members of the Senate around matters of political issues, laughing and just kind of going along with this gleefully, like a school kid. These are frightening. This is a frightening moment that we're in.
When we come forward, I want to test out a theory that I have about where this thing is going. You mentioned Senator Lindsey Graham, and just yesterday he was aboard Air Force One with President Trump on their way back to D.C., and they did what's called a gaggle. Basically, it's like a little impromptu press conference on Air Force One, and I was streaming it, live from L.A., and the president talked about looking for ways to employ the Insurrection Act. It was about 10 seconds in the stream of consciousness and the response to, dozens of questions from reporters aboard Air Force One. And I couldn't help but put these pieces together and think that it's quite possible that we are watching the pretext in slow motion, where America, through acts of aggression, are seizing control of governments, seizing control of the assets of sovereign countries in the hemisphere, baiting them into some sort of conflict in order to say, oh, wait a minute, America, God forbid, has been attacked, and therefore we need to suspend elections. That is the pretext that I'm seeing in slow motion. But I want to get your take when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Desiree Cormier Smith and Bishop Joseph W. Tolton.
Hit me! National news, the consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Shout out to everyone in the More Perfect Union group chat on YouTube. We see all the activity there. Morris Phillips, Selena Ricks, we see all y'all in the chat. We appreciate all of your comments and perspectives. Morris, I see that you believe that, we're going to have elections, right? But I'm just reporting on what the president said on Air Force One and how they're trying to find a way to employ the Insurrection Act. I have a theory in terms of why, but enough for me. Bishop, what say you?
I am convinced that the Supreme Court is going to gut Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And this is very intentional. It is one of the last chess moves regarding really the undermining of Blackness as a political identity and Blackness as political strength. So I believe that the assault on our elections is and on the electoral power of people of African descent in particular in this country is something that we haven't seen yet fully exercised. So I don't rebuff your theory. I think it's very possible, but I do believe that we will have elections in that to some degree, Hungary's model and Orban's model is have the elections, but just make sure that you're able to capture the electoral process. So I think that if there's an issue with a military invasion and using that as an excuse, that what we'll do is that we'll see our elections militarized in terms of National Guards being sent out and other forms of law enforcement to patrol our elections, which will obviously decrease significantly the participation of particularly African Americans and particularly African American men and Hispanics to some degree as well. So I think an assault on our elections is absolutely, I think your prediction is absolutely correct. I may not be in lockstep with you to the degree to which, or the tactic whereby which elections will be shut down. But in theory, I think you're absolutely onto something.
That's a fair point. Desiree Cormier Smith, 60 seconds. I'm going to give you the last thought.
Look, I don't put anything past these people. So I hope that they don't do anything crazy, but hope is not a strategy, right? So we need to be prepared for the worst because they came out the gate swinging in 2025, put us all through the washer cycle, right? And so I think we just need to be clear-eyed that this administration does not have any respect for the law, does not have any respect for the Constitution, and damn sure doesn't have any respect for Black people or our political power or our democracy. So I think we do need to be clear-eyed about the threats. And when they say something, believe them.
Spoken like the granddaughter of Larry Aubrey. We love it. God bless his soul. Our thanks to Bishop Joseph W. Tolton, founder of Interconnected Justice, and also Desiree Cormier Smith, who's the co-president of the Alliance for Diplomacy and Justice. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village that helps us produce A More Perfect Union, starting with our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Brother Andy, to our show producers, Faraji and Art and Journey, and to each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We curate the show every day with you in mind. This is your one-stop shop where we try to make it make sense. We try to connect the dots. Every day is a new day, and we're going to be on this job. Happy New Year to everyone. And remember, do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and you've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580.